Hello and welcome to episode 20. Oh, okay. Hello there and welcome to episode 21 of the Avoid Crisis podcast. Boy, that music brought some memories. Today's Thursday, October the 5th, 2023, and this is the first in a series about using AI in your job, your company, your professional development. We have a special guest today, but first I'd like to introduce ourselves, the co-hosts of Avoid Crisis podcast. I'm Ray Ariano, and my co-host, Alan Plyler. Hey, Alan, you really crushed it, man, on those last three episodes on the AI winners in the stock market. And I really encourage those who have not heard those episodes yet to give them a view or a listen. Um, Welcome. How'd you come up with the ideas here of what we're going to kick into today?
Well, I think the main point of this whole series is going to be about talking about AI and how it's going to influence and change our lives, and wanted to bring to the audience some of the people that are really impacting the thought leadership in AI and who have really contributed to presenting some sort of sanity to the whole thing. Because right now, everyone is challenged about what is AI, where's it going, what's going to happen, and our guest today. Well, first of all, why don't you go ahead and introduce her and maybe even talk a little bit about how we had that opening credits. I mean, we played the credits even before we get into the whole discussion. So let's jump into that because I think we're going to have a lot more uh, interesting things happen in this particular podcast. So go ahead and introduce our guest if you don't mind, Ray.
Definitely, definitely. We're trying to get a hands-on, practical approach here to AI. I'm really honored to introduce our guest, Tanya J. Long. She has over 2 decades of experience as a tech executive, steering multinational firms with billion-dollar tech companies in a range of industries. She spearheaded over 20 corporate M&A integrations. She's been a fractional chief AI officer. She's a company founder in the talent management space and is an advisor on private boards. She's a leading voice in digital transformation, artificial intelligence, corporate governance, and talent management. Tanya earned a degree and advanced degree, graduate degree in public policy from the University of Tennessee. She really has a unique breadth that has established her as an authority in this complex discussion and evolution of AI and policy and business, etc. She's recently, within the last couple months here, released a book, AI and the New Oz. We're going to talk in depth about that, and it's a guide for business leaders and teams um, to not just use but to embrace generative AI in their organizations and jobs. And with that, welcome, Tanya.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I'm so excited. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Alan, I've got my list of questions. Do you want to jump in with yours, or where do you want to go?
Uh, yeah, I mean, the book itself, and Tanya, we're going to talk to you a lot about this book and the idea. But the book itself was something that was really intriguing to me in its concept. And so the concept was looking at AI and saying, how can we explain the whole scenario of AI, how it's going to impact you in your life, how it's going to impact corporations, and take it from the leadership angle, but also reduce it down into understandable content that comes through in a very easy to read, get type of approach. And by the way, this is to me, from going through this and seeing it, I was like, I can read this and get a lot out of it. My mother can read this and get a lot out of it. My sisters can read this and get a lot out of it. And I was looking at this going, this is a kind of book that I think every leader in an organization should be handing out to all those on their team and saying, read this, you need to see what's coming in AI. And what she's done is she's taken this entire um, theme behind The Wizard of Oz, a movie that we're all familiar with, and she's kind of looked at this and put together a roadmap to successful AI adoption. I want Tanya you to talk a little bit more about this, but first of all, we got to think about how AI is leading us on this yellow brick road. I mean, there's some real benefits on the way. I mean, I think we had a clip on the yellow brick road, didn't we?
Go so follow the yellow brick road.
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow, 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 follow the yellow brick road.
All right, Tanya, you're gonna have to explain this.
Shag carpet, massive TV as a piece of furniture. You too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So go ahead and tell us, what led to this, to you writing this book, and then why did you choose like The Wizard of Oz as your allegorical representation?
What led to it? Well, like a lot of other people that do what we do, I started playing with ChatGPT, really. I mean, that was kind of the poster child that started this generative AI buzz that we all got associated with. And the more excited I got, started querying my friends, and found two camps. I found the camp that was on fire, 2 a.m. in the morning, texting each other. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? You guys probably were in those camps. But I found a whole lot of people that were afraid to touch it. And those people were my C-suite buddies. And they were hands off. They were frankly, they were blowing it off. The harder they blew it off, the harder I pressed. And that worried me. And then I also spoke with people who were in what I would call less technical camps. We work amongst them. They're our friends, they're our family, but they had this perception of it being completely, too technical for them. Even though I'd say, you realize your 9th grader downloaded that and he's writing his papers on it. But they still had this perception of it being too technical. And I thought, oh, we are headed for a massive head-on collision, because I saw what it was going to do. And I thought, if people are afraid of this technology, because I knew and understood the root of the fears on both sides. And I thought, if they don't start using it at its fundamental, simplest level, we're going to be in trouble unnecessarily. And so that was really my impetus for starting down the path, because I pushed and I couldn't get traction. And then you asked why The Wizard of Oz. Well, I knew I had to make it relatable and simple. And I knew my thought leadership pieces on LinkedIn weren't going to reach a broad enough audience. That's why it had to be. I was just, noodling around on what would make it relatable and simple. And I was thinking about it. And frankly, reached into my jewelry box. And there was a pen that my mother, she's gone now, but she had given me just a cheap 20-year-old pen that was the ruby red slippers. And I pulled that pen out. It might even be older than 20 years old. And I pulled that pen out, and it just sparked something in me. And I came back and sat down at this desk, ChatGPT, said, so I just started collaborating ChatGPT, and inside of an hour banged out back and forth and back and forth and back and forth what the chapters might look like. And it was like, there's really a framework here because it was just so clear and simple. If you look at courage and wisdom and vision and teamwork and all, and I thought, wow, this makes it easy. And so as I wrote the book in 90 days, and people are like, how? And I was like, because the framework was there. I really didn't have to think as hard to create, because it was just getting the framework set with the right examples and the right stories to help the point come across. And so that's where it came from.
One of the things that I thought was interesting is that you made a comparison with The Wizard of Oz to cataclysmic events like tornado, cyclone, and you've said, AI is kind of coming at us in this kind of a rapid
Mhm.
whirl of, information, data, all kinds of things happening, changing our lives, and you kind of compared it to what was happening in The Wizard of Oz. I thought that was really interesting. Maybe you can kind of talk a little bit more about, why you see AI developing like that.
Well, because it's scary and it's the unknown, and I do spell out in the book how technically it has been coming for 80 years, but the average person doesn't realize that research started on neural networks 80 years ago. The average person said,
Mhm.
holy moly, what happened in January, February, when the public consciousness started seeing all this and recognizing the intensity of what was happening. And I think most people immediately developed a fear of, because the power of what generative AI, let's be a little more specific
Mhm.
for our technical audience that's listening, of what generative AI can do and deliver, and how quickly people can use it. I'm reaching for my phone because this is what made a difference, right? And in our past, we had a chance to see technology coming or even massive change coming because you had to lay down infrastructure. You had to build networks. You had to build steam plants, before it was digital technology. And this,
You know,
you have people downloading it. So it's that speed that I
sure.
think scares people.
When you talk about the fear people have of AI, I think that there's a lot of concern about could it be that AI is going to replace humans somehow, and will AI do the thinking? And I know that you kind of pointed back to, I think it was the Scarecrow, right? I think we might even have a clip of the Scarecrow and kind of
What
put that
would you
into
do
some
with a brain if
perspective
you
here.
had one?
Do? Why, if I had a brain, I could while away the hours, conferring with the flowers, consulting with the rain. And my head I'd be scratching while my thoughts were busy hatching if I only had a brain. I'd unravel.
You had fun with
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
Alan has his clips lined up today. That's for sure.
He does. So fear,
Mhm.
help me with a question.
Well, I mean, the idea that humans are not going to be needed in a lot of jobs,
Mhm.
their current job is going to be replaced by AI. AI is going to do the thinking for you. So, are we becoming scarecrows where it doesn't really matter and we don't have brains and AI is the replacement? I mean, that's some of the fear, right? That's to the far end of the extreme. But you talked before about AI has been coming for a long time. In your book, you
Mhm.
talk about some points raised by Mark Andreessen, and you also talk about some
Mhm.
points raised by Bill Gates, right? So these
Mhm.
are important understandings in the whole AI development. And you really kind of go and take a look at this with the scarecrow and say, hey, what we should be thinking about here.
Yeah, there's a quote I love that's in that chapter, and it's an Andreessen quote about how, and I'm going to butcher it right now, but he basically says in an Andreessen way how the smarter people are, the better society becomes. The healthier we become, the more emotionally secure we become, and my heart completely aligns to that. I think that we're going to lose jobs, and I think we're going to create jobs, and that's why I'm so insistent on people at all levels and all skills and all verticals starting to use this wherever you are. You can build a new business with it. You can start your startup today, or you can build a meal plan for your keto diet. I don't care, but everybody needs to get started. Fear does not take you forward, and that's my whole point of wanting everyone to embrace it. There's no shame. There's no shame, and the fear is there, but it needs to go away, and the only way it goes away is with using the varied applications and starting to understand and embrace and understand how to use it, and then identifying where your fears are so you can push those to the side or answer the questions that you have, so the fear turns to understanding. um, that fear of job loss is always going to be there until we go through a few cycles of stepping up how business works. Jobs are business, and stepping up how business works and elevating. Someone posted on my on my X feed today, that they had put a written piece in, and they're a fairly new user, and they put it into Chat GPT, and they were like, "Gosh, I got better feedback from Chat GPT than I ever got from college professors. It really lifted my ability to perform." And I think, and they said AI is going to amplify my creativity, and I was like, yes, because that is what it will do. It will not take away our creativity. It will amplify and make us able to reach our audiences and do better jobs than we would have done without it.
I think that it's so inspiring. The use cases for generative AI
Mhm.
are from personal to professional to hobbies and interests, and it can go so many directions. Um, I, I wanted to focus a little more on the business side of it and
Mhm.
the professional side. So from, say, people, recent college grads or people entering the workforce or
Mhm.
profession, mid career
Yeah.
people, with,
Mhm.
and then you got the C-suite level. Um, how would you advise them to say use your book is part of you know
Mhm.
their professional track?
Yeah. So my personal thing is the technology is going to be turning over and changing at a rapid pace for the foreseeable future. And it'll be different per vertical. That's why my book is focused on behaviors and attributes and and we could say leadership traits, but I think everyone within an organization
Yeah.
leads from where they are. That's my perspective. And so, in using the book, I think it's about leading with love and having courage and expressing wisdom and vision at, at an entry level. So, I think every single person, and there's not a chapter on grace because there's not a character that personified grace.
Mhm.
But I think in the middle of all this, we're going to have to wrap it with a big, healthy dose of grace because people are going to be settling into new roles. And I don't mean titles, I mean a different perspective on who adds value and how. I think that we are looking at an intergenerational swap with AI. I think we're going to have to let go of egos. I think that instead of Bane walking in and telling you how to do things, I think that 25-year-olds that are closest to the work because they're more entry level are going to be dictating how the processes work. And I think our
You know,
C-suites who are much older than 25 are going to have to get used to that. But our C-suites have much broader perspective. So here's where I'm talking intergenerational because I think there's value in age and wisdom and breadth of experience. And I think there's value in the people who have been closest to the process that have been, I'm going to say, sidelined in the past and have been told to wait until somebody comes in and tells them what to do. And I think we're going to all have to work through this balancing act of valuing each other, and it's going to be a shift in culture that we're all going to have to give each other grace and some patience and a whole lot of love, courage, vision, as we're good to each other as we work through
you know,
a lot of uncertainty.
Tanya, as you're talking about that, it reminded me of how much you talked about collaboration in the
Hmm.
book. I think we have a clip a little bit that kind of discussed how Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz used
Alan and his clips. Here we go.
Yeah.
Now and never will again, I fancy. There's only one of him, and he's it. He's the horse of a different colour you've heard tell about. Ha ha ha, ho ho ho, and a couple of tra-la-las. That's how we laugh a day away in the merry old land of Oz. Buzz, 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 chuck, 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 and a couple of la-dee-das. That's how the crickets squeak all day in the merry old land of Oz. We get up at 12 and start to work at 1. Take an hour for lunch and then at 2 we're done. Jolly good fun, ha ha ha, ho ho ho, and a couple of tra-la-las. That's how we laugh a day away in the merry old land of Oz. Ha ha ha, ho ho ho, ha 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 la la. That's how we laugh a day away with a ho ho ho, ha ha ha, in the merry old land of Oz.
It's kind of interesting there is Dorothy was able to bring the Scarecrow and the Tin Man
Mhm.
together and looked at their strengths and weaknesses and really started to bring those people together for a common purpose, and really
Mhm.
was a leader in that. And that was something that you pointed out in the whole process of collaboration. This is going to be a really important thing as we enter into this new AI generation, right?
Mhm.
Generative
Mhm.
AI and new AI generation of people working together in a way that they haven't in the past, and it's going to need to be a lot more collaborative. And maybe you can talk a little bit more about some of the points you made on that in the book.
Well, I mean, look at the team Dorothy assembled. The most unlikely creatures, a brainless scarecrow, a tin man who wanted a heart. And yet all of those characters were critical to helping Dorothy find her way home. Dorothy didn't assemble best in class, world class, Yale MBAs. Uh, Dorothy assembled the most unlikely team that worked well together, protected each other's backs. Um, I think we're going to have to do the same. We're going to have to look at diversity being a strength, at unusual combinations that get us to the goal. The goal is going to be different for every organization, and I think that the strength in that diversity is gonna get us there. The lion accomplished thing that each of those characters accomplished things that were outside of the scope of what their form should have delivered. And she had no way of knowing that, but she also gave each of them how she led, gave each of them a safe space to grow beyond into what they wanted to be. A scarecrow wasn't supposed to have a brain, but she made it okay for him to want something more. And I think as leaders, we have to make it okay for our teams to want something more because AI is going to be limitless. And so instead of putting caps on
Yeah.
people, we have to give them that clear berth to move to advance beyond what we can do in order for the organizations to grow. So just
Yeah.
tremendous, it's a tremendous leadership paradigm shift that I don't even understand. I know is coming, and we've all got to open up outside of the old ways uh, to realize the net gains that are going to be possible.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about fear, and we
Yeah.
talked about things like trying to embrace this change,
Mhm.
and that causes a little
Mhm.
bit of apprehension. Maybe there's a lot of different feelings. All these things are coming out of the heart, though, and it kind of reminds me a little bit about the story that you talked about with the Tin Man. Do we have a clip on the Tin Man here?
I bet we do.
All Hallow. When a man's an empty kettle, he should be on his mettle, and yet I'm torn apart. Just because I'm presuming that I could be kinda human if I only had a heart. I'd be tender, I'd be gentle, and awful sentimental regarding love and art. I'd be friends with the sparrows and the boy who shoots the arrows if I only had a heart.
Okay.
so, so, so what I'm hearing, Tanya, is that
Yep.
this shift in the information age, essentially, right? The
Mhm.
internet was a quantum shift to how we used to do things with, library and Dewey Decimal Systems and those long drawers with all those cards in them,
I
right?
remember those.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Everyone younger than, I don't know, 30 should probably look it up on the internet.
Mhm.
But I think this is going to be just a magnitude shift greater. I think of, say, little artisans in a neighborhood or a village that provided goods or services to the community versus industrialization versus information age.
Mhm.
I think we're hitting a huge jump here in the next couple of years as we figure out how to use this. There's going to be advantages, I think, to early movers and early adopters. And uh, Wondering how, as a leader, because we're so used to this top-down hierarchical system,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I'm kind of sensing that this is going to kind of it could go out the window, right? What do you,
Mhm.
from your perspective of having consulted and advised in transformative change,
Mhm.
M&A activities, things like that? What advice, you know, I mean, I've heard leading from the heart. I've heard,
Mhm.
growth mindset. I mean, this sounds to me like it's almost going to be as much of an attitudinal change as it is going to be a
Mhm.
technical change, being able
Mhm.
to use the technology, but also having the right mindset to to get through this time constructively.
Completely. But there's still business to deliver. So I think there's still value in leaders are going to have to lead more from the heart, but the ability for those leaders to figure out new ways of doing that while they make sure that deliverables get done that are core to what the business is trying to deliver. I think communication has always been challenging. Uh, Cross-functional communication that's consistent from boardroom to break room, and then consistently going out to the clients has always been challenging. And I think with AI, it's going to become even more so, and it's going to become more critical that it stay consistent. And that's where I think leaders have an opportunity. Lead with love, but make sure that everybody is informed consistently and doing the right things for the right reasons to deliver what customers want and need, and that the input is bi-directional so that customers are growing with the company as fast as they want to. You're
I
not going
think
to have a fish company making tractors, right?
I
So
think you make a good point here, Tanya, in that leaders really need to embrace AI, understand that it's coming, whether they like that or not. It's
mhm,
going to impact their organization. It's going to impact their teams, and they really need to get in front of it. And they have to do that with a certain sense of boldness and even courage. And you can't really be cowardly at doing that. And that kind of reminds me of the lion, the cowardly lion. I mean, I think we have a clip on that as well.
Brenda, Dorothy.
Oh, Dorothy? Who's Dorothy? The wizard will explain it.
The wizard! The wizard!
Dear, whatever shall we do?
Oh, we better hurry if we're going to see the wizard.
Here, everything is all right. Stop that now. Just have this. Go home.
If you please, sir, we want to see the wizard right away.
I think that one was a clip just about seeing the wizard, and she brought the lion with her
My
there. So he
goodness,
was
what a
being
fuss you're making.
pretty bold
Well,
to go
naturally, when
there.
you go
But
around picking on things weaker than you are, why, you're nothing but a great big coward.
You're right. I am a coward. I haven't any courage at all. I even scare myself. Look at the circles under my eyes. I haven't slept in weeks.
Why don't you try counting sheep?
That doesn't do any good. I'm afraid of them.
Oh, that's too bad. Don't you think the wizard could help him, too?
I don't see why not. Why don't you come?
overacting
okay,
was not a thing back then, was it? What a great clip. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. I mean, it is kind of interesting to just be thinking about, for some people, maybe that's what they're thinking. Put their head in the sand, count sheep, do whatever, try to
Mhm,
find some way to ignore this, but it can't be ignored. I mean, AI is really on its way, and it's already infiltrated in many different places. And I think some of the things you talked about too, about some of the concerns. I mean, one of the concerns was just the ethical use of AI, leaders needing to understand that. Another thing was, we're talking about data and a lot of data governance, data management.
mhm.
When you put those concepts into place, what kind of things should leaders be thinking about?
Making decisions. And here's why I say that. Um, some things that are right and wrong are really black and white. Those aren't the things that are problems. Um, the things that are problems are where the gray zones lie in organizations, and organizations aren't clear on their choices and decisions. And when organizations wait um, and don't make solid decisions, then their teams are in turmoil because can we use ChatGPT or not? Do we have to cite our use of AI or not? Um, it's like I said a few minutes ago, communication is paramount. And for me, internal governance is paramount because when you lack internal, and governance is such a loaded word, but when you lack identifying for your organizations what's expected of them, people will individually make up their own rules and then they'll fight about it. And that is such a misuse of employee time and energy and goodwill. And so we could talk all day about the formality of ethics and how we use data. I think it's pretty clear to most people the black and white, right from wrong uses. It's the things that are company specific based on that company's, regulatory tolerance for risk and those things that need to be articulated. And my biggest concerns are when companies pussyfoot around, to use my country term, and don't make clear choices and communicate those to employees, and it wastes so much unnecessary time. That's my encouragement, is make those decisions and know that you can unmake them.
That's right.
Company policies are living dynamic things. It's perfectly okay to make a decision, and as things progress, as the market shifts, you shift how you do business internally.
Yeah, you tweak it. I mean, it gets back
Mhm.
to those three pillars you were talking about vision, communication, and delivery, right? And part of that vision is this governance and these rules, and telling the team that it is okay to use this tool, encourage them to use this tool,
Mhm.
but explain
And
what the
how.
guardrail and how explain what the guardrails are,
Mhm.
because a lot of professions you have confidential information.
That's right.
It could be legal, it could be healthcare information, it could be financial information, etc. And no, you can't put that into an open generative AI engine and try to
Mhm.
get information back on it. That data now gets sucked into its brain,
Mhm.
and that's not good, right? So
Mhm.
you got to give some guidelines and patterns. A leader who sticks their head in the sand is basically asking for disaster, versus someone who's
Right.
eyes wide open. How are we going to do this? What are we going to do, not do? And as you say, I really love your idea about communication from all levels,
Mhm.
because that something teen-year-old or 20-something-year-old is probably going to have a different idea and perspective
Mhm.
than the 50, 60-year-old, but they're
Mhm.
each of them have experiences that are going to help the other figure out the best way to use this tool.
Yes.
So I love that about the vision, the communication, and the delivery.
And companies, I
You know,
think, also have to loosen up their policy tolerance. I'll give an example. I'm working with a company right now that is, they're like, no AI, no, and we're getting down to the level of it's about transcription services and there's tremendous value in transcribing meetings, and then what comes out of that produces action items. You can imagine the value in a fairly large size company in doing that, and IT is just like, no, because we handle confidential data. No. And I'm like, well, wait, time out. Because some of these applications, it stays on your machine, it's encrypted, it never crosses over into their software. Why are you saying no? And it takes someone challenging them, because their IT's making an assumption that it's crossing over into someone else's environment. And I'm like, it does not. And if you need to verify that, you can. But I think companies are sometimes in the mode of saying no instead of doing the research,
Right.
because they're short staffed or whatever.
Because it could cross over, right? I mean, there
Hmm.
are some platforms where it
Oh,
does,
absolutely.
and there's others where it doesn't. And so,
Hmm.
figure it out. I mean, um,
And
yeah,
right now is the
the
time when
cross.
we don't need to be saying no, because that's the way we've always done things. I think employees are going to be very sensitive to that right now, because there's these opportunities in front of them to be so much more efficient than they have been in the past. And to just be told no is not going to be good enough. You're going to appear to be an outdated, anti efficiency dinosaur. and good employees will leave because they
They're-
won't want to be in a company that
Yeah.
can't grow.
yeah, they'll circumvent
You
you,
know,
undermine you, or leave. Yeah.
Mhm.
cross-functional collaboration is going to be really important, and also brings up the whole issue of ownership, like who owns the AI. And so those are discussions that are going on at both the corporate level, but it's also at the board level, because in discussing AI and the journey, which is a transformation type of journey, the CEO, CFO, et cetera, are looking at their organization saying, what are we doing about AI? But the boards are asking this question too. And Tanya, I
Mhm.
know that you've served on boards, and so I know you're asking that question. But how do you provide guidance um, to these boards and to the CEOs and the C-suite on, this is what AI is going to do? And one of the things I'd like you to also point out too is the partnering of the individual with AI to meet deliverables in this.
Okay. Um, I'm just going to say this very declaratively. Every company needs to have an AI strategy. I don't care if you're a bakery. Um, you should have at your level with your culture. So at your level of detail for what you do, you should have some thought given to how AI will impact you. So your bakery, your product is not going to have AI in it, but there may be something with your supply chain. There may be something with how you serve your customers. Some level, somewhere, AI already touches you very likely. If it doesn't, it will soon. So every off the top of my head, but it's a great example. Maybe I need a cupcake. But every company needs to have an AI strategy as it relates to boards. You better get that strategy together soon before your board asks for it. So that's my best world case is every company is developing their strategy and they're putting that information proactively in front of their board to say, this is what we're doing. This is where we're headed. This is the impact we expect, especially when we're talking about more active, formalized boards. We want to be talking about this is how we're going to grow with AI, whether it's in your product or not. You want to be talking about what the regulatory impacts are. You want to be talking about how you are going to be tracking that and monitoring it so that future impacts, this is not a one and done. This is a how are we both protecting ourselves and looking to grow within the company? What's our strategy for development of this company with what we believe is available for AI, and how will we manage that, and how will we prioritize? There's so many dimensions to it, but you want to get in front of that and provide that to your board before your board asks you for it. Um,
One of the things that was interesting too is that
mhm,
you got to look at all of the things that can happen once you are on this journey. And I know with Dorothy,
mhm,
she was wanting to get to the point of following the yellow brick road, and then
yeah.
the Wicked Witch came up. I think we have a clip of that
Tanya,
as
I sense a
well.
clip coming up, Tanya.
I thought you said she was dead. That was her sister, the Wicked Witch of the East. This is the Wicked Witch of the West. She's worse than the other one was. Who killed my sister? Who killed the Witch of the East? Was it you?
No. No, it was an accident. I didn't mean to kill anybody.
Well, my little pretty, I can cause accidents too. Aren't you forgetting?
Yeah, you kind of wonder about AI and it causing accidents, right?
Mhm,
Unintended consequences, as we talk about. Maybe
mhm.
the deployment isn't the way it should have been, and we're going
They're
to learn the
not.
lesson too late.
Mhm,
Ray and I have had a number of discussions in the past about AI and the readiness of companies, and we're finding that
yeah.
companies themselves are not as ready. This
No.
morning, I had a survey that came to me, and it was looking at people in the AI community and asking them how much they're using AI, and the response was over 56% were using AI daily. So there's a lot of adoption that's going on
Mm,
in certain circles, and at the same time, at the corporate circles, we're seeing that there's a lot of potential unintended consequences. Not
mhm.
knowing, are we talking about the Wicked Witch of the West, or the Wicked Witch or the Witch of the East, whatever. So tell us a little bit more about how you looked at that in the book.
Uh,
I think the Wicked Witch was, if I remember right, like resistance or something negative.
yeah,
If I
yeah.
remember.
That the chapter
Yeah.
about resistance is about the witch.
Yeah.
Tell me, can you restate the question for me? I'm sorry.
Well, I was mainly putting it together from an AI and saying that
Mhm,
potentially there's outcomes that we're not anticipating because it's new. We don't have enough experience. I mean, it's
mhm.
not really new. I mean, you made the point it's been around for 40 years, but deployments are relatively new. And whenever you have an implementation of
Mhm.
something new, there's a lot of
Right,
things that happen where you didn't think about it, wasn't planned ahead, and you have
right.
to react to that. And it's the whole transformation journey. And just talking about the fact that you can have these negative outcomes, how do you, in the process of this journey, kind of plan ahead, mitigate the risk in the whole transformation to AI in your organization?
Well, I mean, you mitigate risk by doing good planning, but I don't think that that's going to be quite the solution that it has been, uh, especially for enterprise that we've had the last 25 years. Um, I You mentioned data in the first round of asking that question, and I that's where I got off track because I think that data is why we're not moving as fast on the enterprise side. Data is going to be our Achilles heel for making traction in the next 12 to 18 months because it has data. We've been talking about data for 10 years at least, and we have not taken it seriously. And I think we slid during. No, I know that it's published. It's actually referenced in the book. There's a couple of references in the book, the book, the book that we. There's a couple of references in the book that we decentralized more data, which leads to less consistency. So I think that we're going to have more problems getting up to, I mean, everything in enterprise AI relies on data. But you're talking more about the Wicked Witch
Yeah.
and resistance. And
Yeah.
I think that um, what we're finding with deployments is this is not a fail fast. This is a plan to fail. This is a fail. Those of us who've been in deployments for in the last 15 years have prided ourselves on we make a plan and that plan gets done. That's not happening in AI. There are things that are happening that we're like, wow, I didn't see that coming at all. And so I think it's there's a different level of tolerance when we're talking about larger scale. And that's why enterprises are not biting, they are not moving forward. We're seeing traction and velocity at a personal consumer level. We are not seeing that at a large scale automation level because frankly it's not that the infrastructure is not ready, but the data infrastructure is not secure, and
Yeah.
organizations aren't committing yet to the work needed to be done to get it ready. And so
Great.
resistance, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna public sentiment. Um, Something. I think shareholders at some point are gonna expect the returns of the savings and the usage of the tools, and that's gonna drive because they're already talking about, and we have been for 3 or 4 months now. Uh, 1.4 million people need to be retrained. 40% of the workforce needs to be retrained.
Wow.
And that work, I ask all my friends all the time, and we don't think that work has started. And it's in 3 years. It's a 3-year span that IBM, made that prediction, that forecast. And I think there's still a lot of people, an industry with their head in the sand, just not quite ready to move. I think they're waiting on other people to kind of make their first move. So we're seeing a ton of technology development. Um, you guys probably know we had as much funding in the first 5 months of this year, January through May. We didn't have as much. We had 3 times the funding as we did in all of 2022. So there's a ton of expectation,
Right.
but I'm not seeing it on the deployment side yet. On the upper end of business scale.
Yeah. It's going to take these organizations time, I think, to to have something visible, I think, to us, and I think that's where this investment's going. But
Yeah.
it is gonna turn the corner, I think, pretty quickly. Um,
I don't know about that, Ray. And here's why. They can't afford to make mistakes.
yeah,
That really
well,
quickly thing, the risk tolerance when you have that many consumers and when your customer base is paying millions of dollars a month in fees,
yeah,
they can't they don't have a tolerance level like you do at the consumer level. And
yeah,
I think it's I don't know what's going to happen. I can't see it. My crystal ball
yeah.
is not clear. Something has to
Yeah,
move, but it's going to be
you
ugly.
know, I think, Tony, the book is really just a fantastic book. It really makes it easy to understand some of the things about AI. You give some great examples in it. Like I said before, I think every leader should have this book on their shelf. It's been great to have you here on the podcast
It's
today.
been
I'm really
fun.
glad that you were on here for a guest. Ray, any other thoughts here?
Uh,
As we
Not just again, thank you, Tanya. How can people pick up a copy of the book? Where's it available?
It is on Amazon in ebook, hard copy, and paperback.
Great. We will put a link in the show notes. If Tanya, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way for our listeners to do that?
There is a website, AI and the new Oz with dashes in between each of those, or they can find me on LinkedIn, Tanya J.
Sounds great.
Tanya
To our
J.
listeners,
Long. Right.
Tanya J. Long.
Middle
Yep.
initial
Long,
J.
right.
Middle initial J. All right. To our listeners, if you like this episode of the Avoid Crisis podcast, please rate us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, LinkedIn, however you're connecting with us. Follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn. If you want to connect with us, you can send email with ideas or feedback. My email is Rey at avoidcrisis.com. Alan's email is Alan.
Alan, ALLEN, at avoidcrisis.com. So again, Tanya, thanks a lot for coming on here. We're on this yellow brick road of opportunity when it comes to AI. Maybe we can close this podcast out with a clip here.
Another clip. Oh boy.
Wizard of Oz. Here he is, the Wizard of a Wiz, if ever a Wiz there was. If ever a Wiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.